We have another example of super oversized clothing. I mean, just look at that purse. I've actually seen a lot of like oversized heart bags like that come from many different brands. Do we want a DIY? So that's a yes on the tutorial then. Hello friends, it's the Stitchess, and I'm here with yet another crafting tutorial. It's been a minute, I feel like, since I had a true sewing vlog, a true tutorial to share with you. But I also haven't had access to my craft stores until, I mean, literally just a couple days ago. But since so many of you requested this giant heart-shaped bag, I decided to make it. And also I kind of just wanted one, so for this project, you really only need 2 items. The first and most important is some sort of interfacing. Interfacing is what is going to give your bag its structure. So this is the Pellon Peltex 71F Ultra Firm Stabilizer. I got this not for any particular reason, but because it was the thickest one that they had at the store. And then for our fabric, I initially wanted to get something at my thrift store, but they really didn't have anything even remotely like what I was looking for, either in a garment or in a bed sheet or in anything in the store. So I had to go to Joann's. I got this. It's a cool toned dark purple, but it has a metallic thread throughout it. So it has, on camera, it looks almost like a PVC, honestly. It's very, very shiny, but in real life, it's a little bit more glittery. So I'm going to use this. This is also a quilted fabric. So it's a double-sided quilt and it has the batting in between. So this will also be a very thick layer. On the inside, I'm going to use some sort of lining, but I don't think I've picked it out yet. I will come to that when it's time to come to that. But yeah, let's get crafting. Our pattern is fairly simple. It's just a heart. I happened to save this massive Valentine's Day chocolate box, so I just traced around the edge of that. You can actually make the heart any size you want. Mine is not as big as, say, the Daria Kiss version, but it'll be moderately oversized. You can make a little heart, you can make a massive heart, you can make any heart you want. After tracing the outer edge of my chocolate box, I add another line to mark my seam allowance. About a 1/2 inch is pretty adequate for this project. The interfacing should fit perfectly inside the seam allowance. We don't want our interfacing to go all the way to the edge of the fabric because it'll add too much bulk to our seams. Then just follow the package instructions for applying the interfacing. Or stitch it down if it's a sew-in. Now it should act like one layer of fabric. I decided on a cool-toned lining with a metallic thread in it to go with my outer fabric that is also cool-toned with a metallic thread in it. Does this fabric look familiar? I'm going to use a fabric binding to finish the bag, just because I haven't done one in a long time. So I'm going to flatline these pieces of fabric together, which is another technique I haven't done in so long I low-key forgot how to do it. To start the flatlining process, pin the fashion fabric piece down to the lining fabric wrong sides together, not right sides together like normal, wrong sides together, you want the right sides out, and secure it every inch or so. It's a lot of pins, but it's worth it. Cut the lining fabric out. And make sure that the fabric isn't bunched up at all around the pins, or else it'll look bad. So in terms of securing the lining, I didn't actually remember the correct order of events right away, but I figured it out real fast once my fabric started making those annoying little pleats. The correct method is to stitch directly over the pins, just outside the seam line, so it won't be visible in the end. Don't try to take the pins out as you go. That'll be bad. And then just serge around the edge if you have that ability. My heart lining has some ugly spots, but hey, you can learn from my mistakes. Our heart should now be sturdy enough to almost stand on its own. Next, we'll measure around the edge of the heart where we want the hearts to be joined. If we want the bag to have as much space as the heart is big, then we need to add another dimension to our bag with a rectangular strip of fabric. I'll be cutting mine 5 inches wide by 30 inches long, but it largely depends on how big your heart shape is and how wide you want the bag to be. The last pieces that need to be cut are 2 more rectangles for the straps, which you can cut to your preference and set them aside. We'll get back to those later. Since I'm using a double-sided quilted fabric, I don't need to line my purse bottom piece, but I did want to serge it. However, I may have run out of thread. Pin the rectangle in place around the edge of your first heart. And then stitch your pieces together as close to the edge of the interfacing as you can get. Unfortunately, I just kind of have to feel for the edge of it, but make sure that you stitch as close as you can without stitching over the interfacing. We want to keep it out of our seam allowance so that the pieces lay flatter against each other and the finished purse just looks as neat as possible. I found that this was the part where it started to get harder to sew. Next, I'm cutting some fabric that matches my bag. I need a 2-inch strip to make a double folded tape out of. That way my finished strip is 1/2 inch wide. You can always just buy bias tape if you don't want to do this part yourself. I'm using a knit instead of cutting a woven fabric on the bias in order to get just a tiny bit more stretchiness. Pin your binding all around the raw edge of your heart. And here's what it ends up looking like. Now we just repeat this whole process for the other heart. Once it's done, let's turn the bag inside out. There are only a couple more steps before this is all finished. The one last bit that needs a little bit of binding are the tops of that rectangle piece. I suppose that probably should have been done before I stitched everything together. But the second best time is now. Now the very last thing to do is the straps. The freaking straps. Start by sewing those long rectangles we set aside earlier into a tube, and then turn them right side out. And turn up the raw edges that are left about 1/4 to 1/2 inch and stitch it down. Before we sew it down in place, let's plan our strap placement. I just put them wherever I think they look best, making sure that my sides are symmetrical. I use the box with an X through the middle of it method to connect my straps, although most of the heart bags I found online stuck it into the lining, which isn't really something that we can do with this method of making a purse.
All around me are familiar faces.
So it's the next day. I did manage to sew this entire project in one day. However, I don't recommend it as a day project. This probably, especially if you're going to do a very big purse, with how frustrating it was to maneuver it underneath the machine, probably not going to be a day project. Definitely thought that this would be easier, but Sometimes when you just have those bigger, huge projects, they just are harder to do. But here it is. It's a purse. It's in the shape of a heart. It's a heart purse. It is a little bit wider than I feel like most of the bags were. You could probably get away with making your middle piece closer to like 3 inches instead of 5. But I kind of like the bigger area on the inside. You can really store a ton of stuff in this. This could easily be an overnight bag. I did mine in a handbag style, but it does still like go over the shoulder. It's still comfy like this. So yeah, that was this project. That is all for today. I hope everybody has a good day, and I will see you all next time. Bye!